All right, welcome back in. Just another football show. We got a epic rematch coming up here.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's a good one. This may be one of the best games of the weekend, in my opinion, though it could be a blowout. We'll see. See how it goes.
It's not prime time. So
this particular one,
chance.
you clicked on it. You know what you're listening to. We're talking Vikings. We're talking Saints.
Yeah, and a really good NFC matchup.
And I'll say we're talking to two staples of our show. We're getting Andy. He hasn't been around for a couple weeks. He does the fantasy report card.
3 weeks without talking.
We got to get Andy on the ringer. He's a Vikings fan, and he claims he's not going to blow purple smoke up our asses.
And that sold me.
That's a big deal. So we'll see what he has to say. I imagine coming off these 2 losses, he's probably not feeling too good, but we will see. And then we're getting Fez. He's going to talk Saints.
And he was our first choice this time.
He was. One time, and he won't let us hear the end of it. So, we'll see. Maybe another miracle, except for it won't be in Minneapolis this time.
No, you have to overcome the Whistler.
The Mercedes-Benz.
The
Whistle monster.
Sure.
And they're probably going to have the damn cameras right by him. Oh.
And all the other people that bring illegal whistles and noisemakers to the
This
stadium.
feels like a watch on mute kind of game. Just because of that atmosphere last time was just
Fox, it'll be Joe Buck.
I mean, it is like
You're doubling down on the mute factor here.
It is a good rivalry, right? This goes back to what 2000.
I wonder if it was at the radio broadcast.
Bounty Gate, like what 2010.
Oh yeah, this goes all the way back.
So,
all the way back.
So there is some quote unquote bad blood here, but we'll see. We'll see what the guys have to say if this is a factor or not, because I'm sure that Andy's gonna have some feelings about this team that might not be conducive to positive outlook. But who knows? Who knows?
Well, let's without any further ado, let's just call Andy and see what he thinks. Right?
Get him on the horn.
Let's get him on the blower. All right. So, like we discussed, now we got on the line Mr. Andy Hall. He is, the fantasy report card guy. If you guys have been listening all season, which you should have been. Andy, you want to talk about your achievements in the field of fantasy? You want to brag a little bit before we get going on this?
Well, yeah, sure. Thanks. I appreciate having me on and the opportunity to humble brag a bit. So throughout the course of the season, my positional rankings, are actually being measured at fantasynation.com. This isn't something I'm wasting any time talking about during the fantasy report card typically. I might have mentioned it toward the end of the season, but only because it's been an extremely successful year in that respect. I just got my final ranking. I came in at number 14 nationally across the board, which is kind of cool. And then when you break it down by position, I did particularly well at the quarterback position, where I ranked 3rd in the nation.
Holy wow. I can personally say that because of our time that we got to spend with you, there are,
a plethora of championships and
four
some silver
championships
medals. Some silver medals here as well.
Lots of championship appearances, and I won 2 of them. And I can attribute it all back to that time that you were in here talking to us, and I could just pick your brain. So I appreciate that. And Casey won, and Jam lost a couple.
I silver medaled.
Silver medaled a couple
titles.
And it's all thanks to your weekly presence on the show and the draft special we do, and the little bit of inside slant we have talking to you personally. So thank you from me.
Somehow I knew that was going to happen eventually.
Oh, there we are.
Oh, we're good.
Sorry about that.
Nope, you're good. So let's sneak on over. Let's start talking Vikings. I know it's been a rough go of the
not going to blow purple-colored smoke up your asses, and that jacked me up to getting to talk to you even more about this. Season didn't necessarily end the way I'm assuming you wanted it to.
No, and I think there are a couple of reasons for that. You'd never want to go into the playoffs on a losing streak as the Vikings have. I think if you look back at that Monday night matchup against the Packers, that's really the one that you wanted to see the Vikings show up and show off a little bit. I'm not sure we expected much out of them in Week 17, seeing as at that point they had already had that number 6 seed locked up, and no reason to risk injury to any of their starting core. So, give another week of Dalvin Cook to get healthier, and unfortunately lost a couple of guys late in that Green Bay game on the defensive side of the ball. And so, I'm not surprised it ended the way it did. It's definitely a little disappointing that they lost in Week 16 at home versus a Green Bay team that frankly, I think is very beatable.
I tend to agree with you there. It has to be a mental thing, right? With Kirk Cousins and prime time games against these teams with winning records, because I don't think it's a talent issue. He's got the talent to beat these teams. We see it. But it just seems like time and time again, maybe it's just the media and the talking heads making more of a deal about it than it actually is. But it does seem to affect his play when it's under the bright lights.
Well, I'll tell you what does affect his play. Two things. It's the offensive line play in front of him, which didn't help him whatsoever in that Green Bay game and hasn't helped him in several of those primetime situations you just mentioned. But I'm also going to mention the fact that I don't think the coaching staff has put Kirk in a very good position at times. Now, I'm not going to completely pass the buck here because Kirk Cousins at times looks like a deer in the headlights, and that's never a good thing for your guy that's your general, your field general out there trying to put points on the board, try to get everybody lined up where they're supposed to be. And he's supposed to be the leader of that offensive group, and frankly, he just hasn't looked like it at times. But I think offensive line, I think sometimes coaching scheme gets in the way of his success. In the end, yeah, the Vikings just aren't looking very good, and I don't give them much of a chance to beat the Saints in the wild card round.
Yeah, going back to that Monday night game, the Kirk Cousins, it was 82 yards, and I watched that game with a couple of Vikings fans, and it was pure frustration. I know that you were frustrated. You messaged us right afterward, I think, and said that you were ready to talk Vikings. So I think that's the game we kind of have to look at as the last hurrah of the Vikings for the season, because Week 17 obviously didn't count. It counted, but it wasn't really the full strength. Although Mike Boone went off, and if that's any indication of what he can do in the playoffs against the Saints, that should make you feel better. But this is the Saints game. They should have Dalvin Cook back, right? They should have kind of all the main offensive pieces in play. Adam Thielen back, Stephon Diggs. We haven't seen all three of those guys in the same game at the same time very much this year. So how do you feel about what the offensive core could look like? Because I know Kirk is up and down, probably better than he gets credit for, but obviously showing up poorly in these bright light situations doesn't help. But having the entire core there ready to go versus a very good Saints team, but how do you feel about the prospects of the offense, I guess?
Well, I think it's a tough place to play first and foremost when, it became apparent that the Superdome was going to be, the spot for this Sunday matchup, round one of the wild card round. I like the fact that the Vikings have a pretty decent record there against different Saints teams, but this year, I don't know. I just don't feel very good about it. This offensive line has underperformed all year. I think Dalvin Cook has made them look a lot more competent than they actually are. And when you took Dalvin Cook out of the equation, you saw what happened. Here's another thing, guys, that you have to consider. It's not as though the Vikings always look bad in primetime spots. I'll take you back just a couple of weeks to their road game at Seattle, a notoriously bad place to play or tough place to play on a Sunday night. And the Vikings had that game in hand, really could have won it in the end, but didn't. Anytime the Vikings offense comes up against a defense that has a pass rusher that can ruin your day, and I'm talking guys like Khalil Mack circa 2018, and of course Zadarius Smith, we saw what he just did last Monday night. Anytime they come up with up against a guy like that is when you really see the Vikings have those issues. So when you look at the Saints defensive front in particular, and you look at a guy like Cameron Jordan, whose father, Steve Jordan, by the way, was a former Vikings great, played tight end. But Cameron Jordan is that same sort of guy that could just ruin your day, and I think that he's going to manhandle whoever they give him on that offensive front. So it's really tough to say, guys. I don't, as I mentioned a bit ago, I don't give my Vikings a whole hell of a lot of a chance to win this game. I do like the fact that our pieces are in place. The defense at times has played poorly, especially in the secondary. Guys like Xavier Rhodes that we've been able to count on in the past just hasn't been doing it of late. And you look at what that Saints offense is able to do with Alvin Kamara, with Michael Thomas, who's had a historical season, even Jared Cook, who's come on here late, and of course Drew Brees. It's going to be a tough one for the Vikings to win.
Yeah, I know that the Saints have a ton of weapons. Like you said, Michael Thomas, Kamara, and Cook has been on a tear. We talked about this a little bit before it was off air, but do you consider like New Orleans a rivalry almost because of the Minneapolis Miracle, stuff going back to Bounty Gate? Do you consider this a rivalry?
as a Vikings fan, I'll tell you that, aside from my general hatred of like the Packers, for example, and I'm not a fan of the Bears, certainly, I would say the Saints are right up there in terms of the teams I hate most. Sure.
And there is a storied history here, especially in the playoffs between these two teams. Like Ryan mentioned, you go back to Bounty Gate when Vikings seemingly had it won, and all of a sudden they decided to just take some liberties and try and get Favre eventually knocked out of the game. It came down to a literal miracle in Minneapolis for them to get over the Saints a couple years ago. This one being on the road. I can understand where you are coming from as a Vikings fan, because I think everyone is always harder on their own team than anyone else. But I don't think it's exactly necessarily doom and gloom against this New Orleans team, because at times this season they have kind of come out and they've looked flat and they've dropped some stinkers.
Yeah, I mean, the Atlanta game is a really good example of this, and we saw the Vikings manhandle that Falcons team back in week 1 when we didn't know Atlanta was as bad as they are or were. The Saints did kind of lay an egg against them, and that was a home game, if I'm not mistaken. So you're right. I mean, listen, there is a bit of a chance here. The Vikings can put it all together. They're certainly capable, but they got to figure out up front what they're going to do in terms of protecting that quarterback. Because if you get that deer in the headlights look, and you can tell pretty early on in a game which Kirk you're going to get, and it doesn't change. If you get bad Kirk from the very start, it's not going to get better.
Yeah, he tends to go down swinging, which is admirable, but certainly doesn't help the scoreboard anymore at the end of the games. I've watched him a few times this year, primetime games and stuff like that, and he's had some very sharp games where he's just tearing people up. But like you said, if he's off early, he's off the entire game, and so it's kind of important to get off to a fast start. I know the Vikings would prefer to be able to run the ball, and the New Orleans run defense is good. They only allow 90 yards per game, but Dalvin Cook is a Pro Bowler this year. He was on a tear earlier in the year until he kind of got banged up a little bit. I do like the versatility of adding a Mike Boone back there too. The late season emergence of Irv Smith is kind of giving extra options as well. So it's not necessarily all doom and gloom. I think that a lot of people might be quick to just immediately write off the Vikings here, but they've shown some flashes of the year that give me a little bit of hope. I guess a lot of people maybe feel bad because it's just the last 2 weeks, but
it's recency bias. It's what have you done for me lately?
It's recency bias, yeah.
But to everything Ryan was saying, the depth that they've kind of developed through necessity at the running back position this season, I think is going to be a big key to them in this game.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, I don't know how healthy Dalvin Cook is. If you look at a 0 to 100 scale, he's probably closer to 100, but he's probably not quite there. So they're going to have to employ, whether it's Mike Boone or even Amir Abdullah, who's had some success at times in the third down situations, passing downs, and situations like that. We'll see how the splits work out. I think if the Vikings are able to establish the run early, again, a difficult task against a tough Saints front seven, that play action game could work really well. Now, granted, the Saints aren't any sloughs in the defensive backfield either. They've got some playmakers back there, Marshawn Lattimore included. But, I mean, listen, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Kyle Rudolph's had a great year for a year that everybody kind of wrote him off. You mentioned Irv Smith. They have the weapons. It's just they got to get that play action game going, and the only way for that to work is for them to establish the run. And I think that's probably what they're going to try to do, at least early on.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely see where this team needs to start fast to kind of at least, because they might be coming with a little bit of that bias where they kind of see it as an insurmountable task to get that confidence early. And
not only do they need to start fast for themselves, but I think it's going to be key here going into New Orleans. This is a tough place to play on the road, and Ryan's mentioned him already. The whistle monster is going to be there. I can't stand it. I got to turn it on mute. But I think it's going to be key to Minnesota to get off to a good start here to at least kind of silence the crowd a little bit, if anything else.
It's funny. My boss called me the other day once the wild card situation was hashed out following the was a Sunday night game, I guess. And he called me up and said, listen, you've been doing the majority of the spectators appearances this season, and we're looking at doing the Vikings Saints game on Sunday at noon. Do you have any interest, or would you rather yell obscenities from the comfort of your home? And I said, I'll take the obscenities from the comforts of my home. So, I mean, again, I am kind of, yes, I'm a Vikings fan, but I'm one of those guys that's been so beaten down over the course of the history of this team and watched them smash my hopes and dreams to pieces so many times that, I mean, is it any wonder that I'm pretty salty?
No, I completely agree with you, but at the same time,
the feeling.
I know our Saints fans going to feel exactly the same way that you do right now based on the way that their previous playoff runs have ended.
Well, if it wasn't for a missed, horribly botched call last year, the Saints would have been there, and who knows what kind of game that would have been between New England and New Orleans. I mean, you can't live in the past, and Vikings fans should know that better than anybody. But still, I mean, yeah, those things do sting. There's no question about it. And all we can hope for is a miracle, but it won't be in Minneapolis this time.
No, and I feel like you might be the one to buck the trend, because now we're going to ask you the same question we've been asking everybody else. Who wins and what's your final score?
I'm taking New Orleans in this game, and I think they score quite a bit. I want to say that New Orleans can put up 27 on this Vikings defense. And I give the Vikings a chance of scoring 17. So let's go like a 10-point gap there, 27-17. I'll take New Orleans here. It's unfortunate because I'd really love a matchup with that 49ers team. I think the Vikings and 49ers would be a fantastic matchup, but I just don't think it's in the cards this year.
As a 49ers fan who does not want to have to see a Seattle team for a third time this season, go Minnesota.
Yeah, well, I mean, if Minnesota wins, that's going to be the matchup. Lower seed goes to number one, and Niners have that home field throughout. And then, speaking, I know you're going to have guys to talk Seattle and Philadelphia, but boy, Seattle, if there's one place they didn't want to go for the first round of the playoffs, it's Philadelphia. And I think the Eagles are actually going to pull that one out.
I can't say yet. We can't give ours away, but I'll wink twice if I agree with you.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Win.
Yeah, I think give me 27-17 Saints. And yes, I'm a salty Vikings fan. I still have hope in my heart, but that's all we've got at this point.
Sometimes that's all you need.
I know the feeling. Trust me, I'm right there with you at certain points. So I'm not too far off. All right, man. We'll let you get back to it. We will. Maybe talk to you next weekend. We'll see what's up.
I kind of hope that they really win now because I didn't even think about that.
That would be a fun
Andy
one.
Get to talk that game. That'll be fun.
Be a little fun.
I'll come on anytime you guys want. I've had a lot of fun this year. Like I said, it's been very successful from a fantasy standpoint, and so I appreciate you guys giving me the platform. And hey, anytime, just ask.
Will do, sir. Thank you.
All right.
All right. So now we're gonna welcome on Fez. He is our Saints fan. He's our go-to. He's the guy.
Every time.
He's the Saints guy. Fez, how's it going for you? You cautiously optimistic rolling into the playoffs?
Last couple of weeks, I feel the team has been picking up some steam, and I feel really good about it going into Sunday.
You're not at all worried about what seems to be the curse against this team in the postseason?
Not really, no. I think the team's got more like of a fire lit under their asses just about what's happened the last 2 years, And I think they're ready for any and all challenges, and whoever is going to step up to their door, they're ready.
Yeah, this week the team stepping up is the Minnesota Vikings.
So the revenge factor is built in.
There is a bit of a rivalry revenge factor, playoff stuff in there. Minnesota Miracle, obviously, a few years back, Bounty Gate and stuff like that. But like you said, New Orleans has been on a tear. If not for a 2-point loss to San Francisco, a month ago, they would have an 8-game or a 7-game win streak. Right, the last loss before that was Atlanta, and that was a weird fluky one. I mean, they just rattle off win after win after win. Beating up the Colts, and the victory over the Titans is pretty impressive. And obviously last week, just smoking the Carolina Panthers. So coming in on a hot streak, Drew Brees is playing well. Alvin Kamara seems to be back. I don't know what was going on most of the season, but
that was very weird.
Yeah, it seems though back to whatever he was before, right?
Right.
And
Like,
go ahead.
and he wasn't putting up any like impressive numbers yardage wise, but like when he was on the field there, he made an impact. And that's what we had him for. This whole time that he's been on the team is just making an impact and making teams adjust for when he's there.
Yeah, and he had a long touchdown drought, but like you said, still on the field, still making you adjust the defense to cover up for him. And Latavius Murray looked great when he was in there too. So I do think it's a good two-headed monster kind of situation with the running backs. And obviously, Drew Brees looks great. Any fear about Drew Brees kind of having that late season slump, or you think he get over that hump?
Well, I don't. I only see it on how he's played the last couple games. I base it off his performance previously, and I mean, I won't rule out that it could happen, but from what we've seen so far, he's been looking very good, and I feel he's going to keep it up.
I feel like you said, this team's got that fire kind of lit under them based on the way things ended and the way the season kind of went out. I mean, these guys were very close to being a number 1 overall seed. All you got to do is beat the 49ers and you're in. Had to get that in there when I could. But this team, just what they did last week and the last couple games, just really just dominating opponents, basically showing that we are going to impose our will on whoever comes to our house, and we're going to get through this playoff and this postseason. We're going to do what we want to do, and we're going to go on to a Super Bowl.
Absolutely, and it's not very often where you have 13 and 3 teams, in the same conference. So it was literally that close to be a number 1 seed, and unfortunately, they're the one team that has to play this weekend now.
But you still do have the home field advantage here until next week. But and playing at the Superdome is massive advantage. We've seen playoff games last year and the home games this year on Monday Night Football and stuff like that. It's just so loud in the Superdome.
Yeah.
It seems like.
And I think what was it? The Saints had their undefeated streak at home in the playoffs snapped just last year with that Rams game.
Do you think that there's?
I think.
Go ahead, Fez.
No, sorry. I think it was the whole Sean Payton era where they've been undefeated at home in the playoffs until just last year.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. I can't think of another time that they lost at home in the postseason.
Yeah.
But this team here, is there – I mean, obviously not Drew Brees or Michael Thomas. These guys aren't going to let it affect them. But just the way things have ended the past couple of seasons, if there's an early point in this game where there's a questionable, no call or call – and it goes against the Saints, do you think some of the younger guys are going to slip into that, we've been here before, here we go again, everything's against us?
I mean, you can always factor that in. And a lot of that has to do, obviously with the young guys. And, it always can, and in particularly the defense. Because before all these late season additions we added, as in Janoris Jenkins and DJ Swearinger and a couple other players, the defense was looking very, very shaky from frustration calls, giving up penalties on third down, and that is something to definitely worry about. But ever since we've gotten all these players, I think Janoris Jenkins has been a gift from God, kind of replacing Eli Apple, and I believe they're going to be able to handle it better. I think so, and I hope so too.
Yeah, you mentioned that signing of Janoris Jenkins. I got to ask you about the little AB situation as well, just considering both of these guys kind of have off-the-field issues. It seems like Sean Payton's not too worried about that, or what do you think's going on there?
I didn't read too much into the Janoris Jenkins situation. I heard it was something going on Twitter, I think, if that's right.
Yes.
And I mean, if it's social media drama, sure, he had some choice words to a fan and whatnot, but it's hard when you're a professional athlete or celebrity and you got people trolling on you. You know, maybe they deserved it, maybe they didn't, but it's just hard to keep it cool at times when you're doing that kind of stuff. And then with Antonio Brown, I was kind of hopeful on it, I guess I would say. You know, who wouldn't be? But, oh gosh, with Antonio Brown, I think the Saints were trying to get him for the playoffs. Apparently, it wasn't looking like it wasn't going to work out due to Goodell in the NFL. And, I mean, they gave it a shot, and if it wasn't going to happen, it wasn't going to happen. And unfortunately, now he's running his mouth saying that it was a publicity stunt.
Sounds like him. Yeah, and I do know that, you know, the need for a second wide receiver for this team is huge. Michael Thomas, obviously extremely good this year, record-breaking season for him. But the next closest guy in targets on the Saints is Alvin Kamara with almost 100 less. So do you think that the Saints team and Michael Thomas can keep up the insane kind of target share reception record that's been going on all season?
I really hope so. We got to see a little bit of Traquan Smith at the last game against Carolina. He scored a touchdown. So I'm hoping they can start giving him a little more and he can actually start to improve. Ted Ginn, obviously I've seen very little of him lately, and I think his time is about running out as well. Surprisingly, also, though, Taysom Hill has been seeing a lot of receptions lately, and I would almost say he's about the third or fourth option in that offense, as crazy as it sounds. But, yeah, I mean, receiver-wise, it is very, very scary, and I wish we had somebody to share the wealth, but I'm hoping they can all step it up and contribute.
Yeah, lately it's been Jared Cook as well. He's on a mini tear of his own. He's been great the last few weeks. Good for me in fantasy. That's been key.
Absolutely.
But I'm hoping that he can get going as well.
Oh, yeah. And ever since the 49ers game, he didn't with a concussion.
Yeah.
He's came back, and he's been playing very well, and I hope that can continue as well because I don't think we've had a tight end as effective as that since Jimmy Graham.
I think you touched on kind of everything we were looking for here. The last thing, you've done it before. We're going to make you do it again. How's this game going, and what does the score look like to you?
I think New Orleans starts out hot. Then unfortunately, they're going to let off the gas pedal here at about end of the first half, start of the third quarter. I'm going to say New Orleans wins by 10, 28 to 11, I guess. 28 to 17.
All right, let's covering the spread. That's what I'm looking for.
That is my prediction.
All right, man. We appreciate the time, and hopefully we'll be hitting you up next week to talk about a big matchup.
Oh yeah, Green Bay.
Revenge factor on the line. We're trying to get back to that Super Bowl. I'm rooting for you guys on that side of things. I got a bet going. So
yeah, I mean, I would.
Thank you.
Bet them in the preseason to make the Super Bowl, not to win it, but to make it. So there's that. You guys are much better on that front than the Indianapolis Colts or the other team I bet to make the Super Bowl. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew Luck. All right, man. We'll let you go about your business, and we will talk to you later.
I appreciate it, guys. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Same to you, man.
Thanks, Fez.
Take care.
All right, that's another one down, guys. We got all these things. They're all out there, guys. We've been saying it. We've been saying it over and over, but all of them are out there.
I will say I also predicted an 11-point game. Or
There
also
you go.
anticipate an 11-point game.
I also predicted the Saints going to the Super Bowl.
Oh, I think I did too.
Yeah.
Come on.
I think we
That was,
both had-
that was the dunker.
We both had them winning.
Yeah,
I had the
all
Bears.
right.
Oh, no, I didn't have them. I had the Bears winning. Oh,
Yeah.
no.
it's a problem. All right, so we're gonna call it a day here. Like I said, all the other Wild Card Weekend game previews are out there for your listening pleasure. Go find them, share them, get some more ears on our product. That would be helpful. So until next time, which is hopefully right now when you click on another video or you're just rolling on to the next game preview
Technical
or
time at work. You don't want to
whatever
get back
it
into
happens
things
to be.
yet.
Yeah, this has been Just Another Football Show.
Bye.
See ya.
Night one.